Forward scout reporting in north of Sector 9. No sign of Vega and his men, but they've found something.
I've never seen anything like it, sir. It's easily the size of one of our carriers, but...
But what?
I don't think humans made this, sir.
Pull back, soldier! We're closing in on the site now. What's that recon tell us?
Nod forces have been detected 6 miles west of the site. It may be a possible staging area for Vega's troops.
If we take the staging base out first, it'll be a hell of a lot easier to get to the crash site. Ava, do you think they can hold out that long?
Destroying the base in this sector will prevent further removal of artifacts from the crash site. In addition, Nod will not be able to reinforce the site from this location. It is highly probable that the Brotherhood will attempt to remove technology from the crash site and store it at their technology center. Locate and secure the crash site, then capture the technology center. Reinforcements have arrived.
Welcome back, Commander. Ignore the save screen we're gonna see. This is kind of something I need to go through every time I start a level. And there's just no real easy way to make a transition between the two. And if you're wondering why there is the audio skip, that's just because, well, I had to stop playing at some point, unfortunately. This is the first of a certain number of optional missions. They aren't all too frequent, but it's nice to actually see their return. The real bonus of all these optional missions, however, is the fact that they will directly benefit the player. Some might be more minor in how they affect the game than others, but overall, there's never a reason to really skip these. Unless you want just a harder mission, you know, but I don't know why you'd already want to do that. If it wasn't too obvious yet, the AI is actually quite good at targeting units. There's been a number of times where either the AI knows or doesn't trust itself in destroying certain units, so it will just flat out go on suicide missions sometimes.
Infantry reporting. Infantry reporting. Infantry reporting. Loud and orders. Waiting orders. Yes, sir.
Being one of the first optional missions, this one won't be too hard for us, but you shouldn't let your guard down because, well, we can't build the base, so you kind of want to be careful just in case.
Yes, sir. Sir.
One thing that must be said is that while these missions sometimes do look very straightforward, there's usually at least a different way to approach them. For example, in the last mission with the SAM sites, you don't have to repair the bridge. You could keep that off, or you could just decide to constantly blow it up if Nod ever tries to go your way.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, that's kind of the long way around it,
Yes, sir.
but at least it's still an option.
Infantry
It also, in a way, rewards a player for sort of exploring what they can do with certain units.
Yes, sir.
If you never thought to actually repair the bridge, you wouldn't have that very nice shortcut. And this level's sort of the same in that respect anyways, but we'll be getting to that later.
Waiting order.
I don't believe I had access to a medic last mission, so welcome to the medic.
Infantry reporting.
It does exactly what you might think a medic would do. The property hasn't really changed since the last game. It is nice, though, to see a return of it, because, well, they're still very, very useful.
Infantry reporting. Infantry reporting.
Awaiting orders.
Sir. Awaiting orders. Infantry reporting. Awaiting orders. Infantry reporting.
Yes, sir. Awaiting orders. Awaiting orders. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
Really, the biggest thing to remember, or at least
Good as
use as nice practice for this level, is that if you ever do end up playing this game, which I highly recommend,
infantry reporting.
despite its dreary looks that some people have mentioned in the thread, the major takeaway from this level is that it gives you a good idea on how you should micromanage, or at least try to aggro some units to pull them away.
Awaiting orders. Yes, sir. Moving out. Awaiting orders.
It's also interesting to note that I don't believe I mentioned it specifically, but it feels like when units shoot, there's a lot more area damage that occurs.
Orders.
Engineering.
So typically you'll end up having multiple units get damaged
Infantry reporting.
by a opposite or enemy unit or whatever their one attack.
Yes, sir.
Reinforcements have arrived.
Infantry reporting.
Yes, sir.
As we can see, sometimes the reinforcements are great, and sometimes not so much. Initially, it doesn't look like this group would be so great, just giving you one engineer, but a couple extra disc throwers and some Wolverines makes up for that.
Loud and clear. Awaiting orders. Yes, sir. Orders. Yeah.
Yes, sir.
This is probably a good spot to mention that while I do agree that this game was ahead of its time in terms of color palette, we'd see this color palette reused time and time again for the next, 16 years or so,
Infantry reporting.
especially in first-person/shooter games. I do feel that it really goes with the aesthetic that the game is trying to promote. The world is supposed to be, bleak. It's supposed to not really be inviting. And while it is slightly desaturated, it still has a nice color mix.
Infantry reporting.
The fact that GDI has a nice gold color, the Nod forces are red, and there's no large conflict with that, it's pretty nice. I could see some gold units kind of blending in a little bit with the ground, but
Sir.
honestly, I don't think there's anything you could really... Like, how do you make dirt not look like dirt?
Got it. Yes, sir. Infantry reporting. Orders.
Awaiting orders. Yes, sir.
Yes, sir. Moving out.
It's also interesting that this game really tried to do something, just do more with its lighting. You don't always see it, which is kind of disappointing, but the light posts actually do serve at least a little bit of a purpose. There is a quasi time of day,
Awaiting orders.
although I don't believe it always comes into play. Like, sometimes you notice it and sometimes you don't.
Infantry reporting.
But ultimately, the point being that
Yes, sir.
the light posts actually do help with visibility.
Heavy, sir.
So destroying them here and there can, while not being game-changing, does at least promote an interesting look on things.
Yes, sir. Awaiting orders.
Remember how I was talking about how the scripting's cool? Hard not to agree with this,
Now, engineering.
I don't think it's possible to stop that engineer from getting in his car either. I know that if you get into the range of the light tower, obviously the entire sequence that we saw happens. But I also believe that if the light tower takes damage, it also, does this sequence.
Bridge repaired.
It always kind of bugged me when I was playing as a kid, because,
Orders.
you only get so many engineers. I always wanted to save them and see what else I could do with them.
Infantry reporting. Moving out. Yes, sir. Medic reporting. Knowledge. Moving out. Knowledge. Engineering.
Oh, and yeah, Scatter's back.
Infantry reporting. Infantry reporting. Awaiting orders. Infantry.
A lot of the keybinds from Red Alert are back. So, if you have any sort of muscle memory or just plain memory for what the buttons were for that, you should feel at ease with Tiberian Sun. And I think I mentioned it, but the game also features the ability to modify your key bindings.
Infantry reporting. Yeah.
It might not seem like a lot, but it's
Medic reporting.
pretty darn useful in this day and age.
Infantry reporting.
And for being a feature in a, 1998 game? Pretty impressive.
Sir. Sir. Yeah. Awaiting orders. Infantry reporting. Loud yes, sir. Now, orders. Loud and yes, sir.
I'll be honest, this is another thing that I really enjoyed about Command & Conquer games. There always seem to be civilians and towns and villages around, something to give more life to the map. This isn't to say that competitors didn't always also have their own stuff, but I don't know, I just always thought it was better in Tiberian Sun.
Yeah. Loud and clear. Infantry reporting. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Sir? Engineering. Knowledge. Infantry reporting. I'm on it. Infantry reporting. Loud and infantry reporting.
For the eagle-eyed viewers, you notice that I had at least like 2 Wolverines take damage there. That's the whole ground attack stuff I'm talking about.
Sir.
It's more noticeable when you have a unit that's almost dead and then you accidentally kill it,
Waiting orders.
and then that kind of affects the outcome of a level, you know.
Waiting orders. Orders. Awaiting orders. Sir. Yeah. Medic reporting. Knowledge. Affirmative. Affirmative. Yes, sir. Got it. Loud and
There's also another thing that will come into play that I think I get to actually show off or whatever in this
yes, sir.
one.
Sir.
I forget which video exactly it comes up in.
Medic reporting. Knowledge. Awaiting orders. Infantry reporting. Orders. Yeah. Yeah. Infantry reporting.
I should probably also mention that this is another one of these examples of just how weird, I guess, the level design is. There are some levels in this game, like this one for example, where you go about and you can explore, or the mission might take you across the entire map. But say with the previous mission, you could have ignored everything north of your starting area, save I guess the one SAM site, and everything north of the Nod base, as well as the entire southwest corner. So
Sir, awaiting order.
I don't know how to really feel about it. I think it's just neat because
Awaiting order. Yeah.
you can explore. It's not necessary. Like there's
Yes, sir.
I don't know. There's a nice balance between the two.
Infantry reporting. Orders. Yeah. Awaiting order. Infantry reporting. Sir. Orders. Sir. Awaiting order. Orders. Medic reporting. Engineering.
So we've spotted finally the train station,
Sir.
and we have to capture it. But we also have to kill all the Nod forces in the area. So we might as well do the Nod structures thing first.
Yeah. You got it.
There doesn't appear to be a timer, and the train isn't leaving even though we're attacking the base, so we might as well take advantage of it for now anyways.
Building captured. Low power.
Capturing these few buildings also gives us a nice look at what Nod can do.
Yes, sir.
sadly, I don't... Maybe if we sold, or if I sold the Hand of Nod and the War Factory,
Infantry reporting.
and then captured... Nah, I don't think there's enough money in it.
Infantry reporting. Sir?
It'd be kind of funny to start up my own base and then harvest, you know, all the Tiberium on the map. But I don't think it's possible. And for those saying that, well, you have a bunch of infantry, they don't really do anything.
Loud and clear.
Yeah, infantry is just not good against buildings.
Sir.
It
Yes, sir.
further,
Yes, sir. Moving out.
I guess, just... It furthers the idea that you really actually want to use units to their strengths rather than their weaknesses. And anyways, light infantry are just garbage. No offense to anybody who really likes them, I guess.
Sir? Yes, sir.
Oh, and that's something else you have to worry about with disc throwers. If they miss, yeah, they're hitting whatever they hit at the end of their life cycle, I guess.
Sir? Engineering.
Now, thankfully, it actually came up. So,
Waiting order.
in my infantry group, you'll notice that there are 2 units that have double bars. Otherwise, if you know anything about military, would signify that they are promoted to lieutenants. And I think that this was honestly one of the first games that ever actually did this. And it makes it completely awesome for it. And that's the fact that units do gain experience. It's a hidden stat that I don't think the game ever mentions, like, at all. Unless you read the rules any file, you wouldn't even know it exists. Well, other than the, you know, giant icons on the units. But the basic gist of it is that a unit that gains 1 level of veterancy, otherwise known as becoming a lieutenant, gets a small bonus to their abilities. The rules any file can... I'll post about it in the thread, and it has something to do with, I think, damage, takes less damage, damage given, damage received, etc. But even more importantly is that you have to kill 10 times the unit's value in order to get promoted.
You got it.
So there are easy ways to get around that sort of limitation, even if you have a large army. And that would basically be by forcing certain units to attack, while the others simply damage it. Oh, and there's 2 giant mechs that we're not going to pay attention to.
Secondary objective achieved.
But again, the more awesome is that a word? Anyways, the better thing about the experience and veterancy thing is that when they get to the general rank, or otherwise known as elite, they get an added ability. And for disc throwers, well, it might not sound all that great, but they automatically scatter when in danger, meaning you don't have to press X whenever a vehicle is getting nearby. You can't crush them. Unlike that guy.
Mission accomplished.